To open up an imaginative inquiry about desired futures, which is at the heart of sustainability as a search process, it is crucial that the people concerned do perceive and activate places in their own living context as spaces of possibilities. One research approach that helps to both assess and contribute to this process is sensory ethnography. Sensory ethnography is not to be confused with the exoticizing ethnology of colonial times. It further develops an ethnographical way of doing research by being based on exploration, direct observation, participation, and interpretation. It investigates societal practices and their embodied, implicit knowledge. Sensory ethnography is an approach to empirical social science that focuses on learning from sensory experience. It focuses careful attention on the corporeal sensory dimensions of human action, emphasizes multisensoriality, the interaction of all senses, not singled out senses. Smell, taste, vision, audition, touch, and kinesthetics, in their interconnection with each other and their relations with key aspects of human existence, such as perception, place, knowing, memory, and imagination, are put at the center of the inquiry. It is about lifting the often unnoticed, invisible sensory and affective aspects in socio-material practices beyond a merely intellectual analysis. Sensory ethnography can therefore help us in the important effort to try to find out how places can be made into more than just material frames and structures imposed upon the people. Rather than only blaming spaces for not being suitable for certain uses, activities, and desires, here we investigate how the space opens up for the imagining and experimenting, how the space becomes a place, so we can better understand and mobilize the activity of place making, making the public spaces, the streets, squares, and others into places with new or old but rediscovered meanings and values. Places have an open meaning. They are created through a gathering where both humans and non-humans are involved. The material surrounding the spaces would stay meaningless if they were not coming to life, so to speak, through specific interactions, activities, and emotions involving all of the human senses in shared experiences. Think, for example, of a special place from your childhood, maybe a fireplace, where you and your family used to gather. Think of the special characteristics of that place and how they came to existence, and how they still live in your memory. The uses of places are changing. Places can be transformed. Also, placemaking is not straightforward, and there is never one single, unambiguous placemaking going on anywhere. This means that when a group of people carry out some placemaking and you investigate it and contribute to it, this placemaking will exist in relation to other placemakings by other groups of people that may oppose and or compete and or complement and or unite to some extent with one's own placemaking. This also means that within the same group, even within the same individual, the same placemaking will actually not be completely uniformed, coherent, or consensual. The sensory ethnographer joining a place has several questions, like what kind of placemakings are going on here? Who is involved? Who is affected? How? How significant, how meaningful is it for the participants? How do different participants experience it? And how can I, the researcher, also share some of these experiences? To explore these questions, the researchers activate their attention, their sensibility, using all of their senses and trying to directly follow and participate in the events of placemaking that are going on. Walking with video is a sensory ethnographic method that allows to directly participate in the perception of places through some of their inhabitants and to produce audiovisual media that can be further experienced, interpreted and shared. The researcher walks through a number of places together with a guide who is a participant in the local project or just an inhabitant or user of the space. The researcher holds a video camera and continuously films the guide as well as the places during the whole walk. This can be half an hour or 1 hour walks through specific sites of local projects that are relevant to your research topic. Or even better, these can be longer, several hours walks through entire neighborhoods, including several project sites. There is no universal rule about the duration of a walk with video. It can last from half an hour to half a day. The researcher should conduct several such walks with different guides in order to comparatively interpret them. This way, you follow and participate in more than one guide's viewpoints. The contradictions, ambivalences, tensions and ambiguities that you may uncover also when later comparing the different videos can become very interesting and very revealing. With this method, you are not walking alone, you are walking with others. This means really being present together, moving together, going together alongside each other on a walk. This also means paying attention to the place together, not just facing each other in a standard interview situation where you are static, face to face, and start having abstract conversations and explanations. Instead, with this method, you are directing your attention both to each other and to the presence of the place and how you experience it. You, as a researcher, are attentive to the making of meaningful and imaginative places. This is not just about designated spots and sites, but also includes any spaces in between that you are walking by. The paths and routes in between designated spaces for specific activities may be very revealing and interesting. Therefore, I encourage you to be attentive to the whole sensory line that you will be tracing together with your guide. A sensescape will emerge through the walk. That is, a landscape of sensory perceptions, awakening thoughts, emotions, memories, and imaginations. You should try to become aware, verbalize, and capture them on your video as much as possible. You should also pay attention to how your guide and yourself experience the transitions between designated zones, as well as the transitions between the specific spaces of the site that you are focusing on and the urban or rural spaces around it. For this, you can walk in and out of the site itself together with your guide to explore how it is experienced in relation to the immediate vicinity. Walking with video is a collaborative process between the researcher and the guide. The researcher needs to be curious and attentive to the guide and strives to partake in how the guide is experiencing things on the site. The guide, not the researcher, is in the center of attention. But the researcher will also be influencing what is going on. Besides following your guide, you may even be sometimes assisting him or her for a small task while doing the film interview. The method also involves a collaboration with the filming device, the video camera. Videos might be intimidating at first, and many people will be feeling uncomfortable with it before starting the walk as well as at the start of the walk. But the filming can be especially useful in helping to heighten the attention to certain things, certain places, certain details. You ask, "Show me," and with the camera you put sustained attention to certain things. And later on, watching the recorded video, you can deepen your understanding of the place-making process and of the shared sense-scape that emerged at the event. The use of a camera can help to learn more or learn differently about a particular question. It can help you, together with your local guide, to define and represent certain qualities of the experience.
Im tatsächlichen Parcours-Training des Stärkens des eigenen Kopfes und des Körpers kein Konkurrenzkampf mit irgendjemand anderem. Es gibt nur den Kampf mit sich selber und der Auseinandersetzung mit der Angst. Und ja, es hat nachhaltig meinen Blick auf die Stadt verändert, weil du jetzt nur noch durchgehst mit, okay, Bordsteinkante, Mauer, oh, da könnte ich hoch, Geländer, Poller. Wir Trasseure die Stadt natürlich anders wahrnehmen. Auch die meisten Menschen gucken nicht mehr in die Höhe. Da oben, alles Stahlträger mit großen Griffkanten. Man könnte sich da einmal komplett unter der Brücke lang. Und wir wollen das halt wiederentdecken. Wir wollen halt diese ganzheitliche Bewegung, zu der der Körper fähig ist, uns erhalten. Wir sind keine Entertainer. Wir wollen anregen, ja, aber wir wollen zum Mitmachen anregen und zum Umdenken. Ich bin sehr gerne hier. Die Architektur macht es perfekt für unsere Sportart. Diese Poller sind wie geschaffen, um Sprünge zu üben. Wir haben Höhenunterschiede, wir haben Geländer, wir haben Treppen, wir haben alles. Das war ein öffentlicher Theaterplatz. Also hier gab es Aufführungen. Deswegen ist er auch so arrangiert. Also es ist ja quasi schon ein stehendes Bühnenbild, das man dann inszenieren konnte. Der wurde dann aber vergessen, so in den 80er, 90er Jahren. Und dann ist er eben zu dem Punkt geworden, wie er gerade ist.
The researcher asks the guide to share own experiences and memories of the place and to show and tell about these by pointing at specific things in the space, while walking together in that space. As the researcher, you have to regularly ask and remind people to show you what they are hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, etc. You follow them and you do your best to join them in their experiential process and to capture their accounts and anecdotes of past experiences in the same place. You ask the person to tell stories, link them to the immediate physical features and textures of the site. When your guide tells you about something, ask your guide, "Please show me." Also, when she or he tells a story of something that happened, inquire about the site again. Ask not just to tell the story, but also to go together to the specific spot and show what happened exactly, where and how. The resulting walking interview situation is very open-ended and does not follow any prepared questionnaire. The researcher encourages the guide to share, and they both adapt to the situation while walking. The researcher has to be attentive to situations and ask questions that emerge from his or her focused attention during the walk and must be able to improvise. The researcher must learn to be serendipitous, that is, to be attentive to learning opportunities arising from unexpected events and situations. It is also an exercise in empathy. Try to relate your own sensory embodied experience of the place during the walk to those of your guide. This might help you generate some further questions for your guide. Of course, you can never be inside someone else's head, but you can try to better understand their experience. Here, the researcher is a sensory apprentice of the guide, learning to perceive things like your local guide, paying attention where she or he pays attention. Think about it as if that person was educating your attention. You should avoid interrupting your guide too often by asking too many questions and being too impatient with answers or too narrow in your curiosity. However, you may need to interrupt. Sometimes, if necessary, when the guide is making a never-ending monologue that goes too far away from the experience of the place. A walk with video is also not the place for gathering too many detailed insights about facts that are not directly related to the experience of the place. For such additional data gathering, you should use other methods. Or take time for a classical interview before or after the walk. During the walk, you should be asking some questions about the place that your guide would not have thought about otherwise. You might need to bring a shared focused attention to certain things kept uncommented by your guide until now. Maybe something you see, hear, or smell, or otherwise sense in the place. Certain present or absent things that your guide seems to ignore or that your guide seems to perceive very differently from yourself. So, what this means is that you and your guide are sensitizing each other to what is unfolding at the sites and in the projects you visit. You are his or her sensory apprentice, but can also help the guide discover new things or help perceive certain things more carefully. And, by the way, not only nice experiences are insightful. Also, negative experiences are a part of placemaking. So you should also encourage your guide to share both positive and negative experiences and memories in case the guide does not do so by herself or himself. You will need to pay attention to the pace of the guide. How does she or he walk and move around on the site? Pay attention to the rhythms and changes of rhythms, while trying to adapt your own walking and filming to these rhythms. However, if the guide stands still for a longer while and discusses a variety of things without moving anymore, you need to start moving, walking slowly, to avoid entering into a static interview situation. And if this is not enough, after a few minutes, you need to then kindly encourage your guide to resume walking.
Ich habe das Gefühl, dass ich hier so mit 36 erst meine Unschuld verloren habe. Und damit meine ich nicht meine körperliche Unschuld, sondern meine mentale, emotionale Unschuld, glaube ich. Weil ich durch all das, was im Moment in der Welt passiert, das erste Mal das Gefühl habe, es gibt richtig viel Scheiße und die ist real und die ist auch bedrohlich. Die ist nicht in der Vergangenheit, es ist einfach da und es kommt näher und es macht mir Angst. Und ich glaube, dass es nicht nur mir Angst macht. Ich glaube, dass man das spürt in der Gesellschaft, dass es viele Leute verängstigt. Und Angst ist so die Mutter oder der Vater von vielen Dingen, die danach kommen. Von Wut, von Hass, von Misstrauen, von allem. Das drückt uns alle nieder. Daraus kann man nichts erschaffen. Aus Angst und Hass kann man nichts Gutes erschaffen. Das war der Ursprung von Tante Trottoir letztendlich. Dass wir gesagt haben, wir möchten den Menschen gerne was geben und wir möchten auch selber was erfahren, was ihnen Mut macht und was ihnen Hoffnung gibt und auch uns Hoffnung gibt. Das finde ich aber wiederum eben spannend. Wie kann ich so Orte benutzen, verwenden und denen so einen anderen Geist einhauchen als das, was sie normalerweise sind. Und diese ganze Fantasie, die die Menschen haben, das ist so schön, wenn man die so rauskitzeln kann und auch Dinge rauskommen, die man gar nicht in der Hand hat und an die man überhaupt nicht gedacht hat. Ich möchte nicht den Leuten ein schlechtes Gewissen machen, wie sie sich verhalten. Ich möchte die eigentlich eher umgekehrt kitzeln oder austricksen, um eine positive Veränderung von dem Ort, von ihrem Verhalten, von einer aktuellen Lage oder so zu erreichen.
In the context of sustainability research, I would suggest that you also aim to find out more about how, for example, some project you will visit creates an alternative sensory context to those framed during the rest of the year by other mainstream dominant cultural practices and the associated sensory pleasures and displeasures that they usually convey. How are experiences made available and appropriatable to local residents through a project? How is this done concretely? Through engaging which senses and how? Through appealing to and involving which specific emotions? Through which kind of oral culture, for example, which form of storytelling? Through which intellectual stimulations? Maybe also through experiences of different economic relationships? How are all these experiences in the space special or particular? How are they ordinary and or extraordinary? What are the local distinctive features at the sites you are visiting? During your walk, which places and which routes feel more inviting to you and to your guide? Where do you feel more confrontation, and how so? Do you directly witness during your walk, or can you find out more about some forms of transmission of sensory skills, knowledge and practices at the project site? Maybe across generations, intergenerational, maybe across cultural backgrounds, intercultural, maybe across subcultures or across professions. Do you directly witness, or can you be told more by your guide about ways in which different participants at the project are educating each other's attention? Where and how does one experience any limits, both physical limits in space and otherwise, for example, limits imposed by speaking different languages? Are these limits more like boundaries that cannot be crossed, or more like borders that one can cross with some effort?
Viele sind genervt davon, dass es sieht einfach nicht schön aus im 0815-Sinne. Wir haben so ein paar Übungen gemacht, um Orte anders wahrzunehmen und anders zu beschreiben. Nach Formen, nach Geräuschen, Gerüchen, nach allem Möglichen. Eigentlich eine Achtsamkeitsübung, um die Ästhetik der Orte aufzunehmen. Und diese Dame hat vorher gesagt, bei einer anderen Übung, wo es darum ging, unter was in der Stadt würdest du gerne Rollen machen, um es zu verschieben? Hat sie gesagt, das IME-Zentrum, eben dieses Hochhaus. Und nach dieser Übung, bei der wir vor diesem IME-Zentrum saßen, meinte sie, also jetzt will ich das gar nicht mehr verschieben. Jetzt will ich meine Rollen gerne woanders drunter machen, um das zu verschieben.
First of all, you are not necessarily shooting a professional documentary film. Therefore, you need not worry about perfect or professional shots. Rather, the video is a help to your memory that will help you reflect, analyze, re-experience your walk a bit like handwritten field notes, a quickly drawn sketch or a memo. It does not matter too much if the camera movement is shaky, if transitions are not too smooth, etc. etc. Of course, if somewhere you can find, for example, a Sony action cam with a better optical image stabilization or a gimbal, it won't hurt either. And having a good working, good sounding microphone, especially with a long-haired windscreen for a better outdoor sound recording, will make a big difference in the sound quality. You should do continuous filming from the point where you start the walk on site until you are finished. Do not pause and start the camera again. Let it run all the time. You need to follow the movements and the site. That means you need to film several things. First, the moving body of your guide. His or her feet walking, hands showing, pointing, doing. His or her gaze directed in certain directions. Your camera accompanies those movements. Second, the features of the site with which your guide is interacting, whether doing something or telling and remembering about something. Do not only film the guide all the time, but go back and forth between him, her, and the site. Third, if something is happening live while you are filming, if some group is having an interesting experience at the moment and they allow you to film it, you can, of course, as the cameraman, camerawoman, take some steps distance and film the group. Fourth, when you notice something that captures your attention and about which you want to ask your guide. But do not constantly interrupt your guide in order to film and ask about every single feature and thing that you are curious about. You should use the camera so that it helps your guide communicate about and with the body. In concrete terms, don't forget to often say, "Show me how," while filming. Your guide will be, of course, aware of a video camera and have own ideas and preconceptions about how to perform in front of a camera and how to communicate to a camera. Try to avoid the cliché of a television interview situation. And what about afterwards? What should you do with the videos you recorded? Basically, it is similar to carefully reading and coding a text transcript of an interview, except that instead of only the audio data, you also have visual data to observe and to interpret. You actually have several options to do an analysis of a video. Either you can do it alone, or with some colleagues, or often very insightful can be to watch and discuss the video together with your guides, and maybe even together with other project participants. They can bring interesting new interpretations while watching the video together. In this lecture, you could see some extracts from a Walking with Video workshop I gave at the Cape Coast University in Ghana, and some extracts from walks with videos that were conducted with different people as part of my research projects, especially a research project in the city of Hanover, Germany. These are only short examples to illustrate some of what I'm saying in this lecture. Ideally, longer sequences would give you a fuller sense of what you can achieve with the method. But the only way to really find out is to experiment by yourself.